Hello, everyone. My name is Manish Lohani, and I'm a product manager here in Google Cloud. I joined Google Cloud through the Cloud Simple acquisition, where I worked in the product team for over 2 years. Before Cloud Simple, I was part of product team at Nutanix, and for a few years. And before that, I was at VMware in the vSphere and vCloud product team. So I've been in the virtualization and cloud space for almost over a decade now, and I'm very happy to be talking to you guys and presenting what we are doing in Google VMware Engine. So in this section, we'll talk about how Google VMware Engine brings the best of both worlds for our customers, where it allows our customers to leverage their existing investments in VMware technology and all the ecosystem tools around VMware, while also leverage cloud services and consume them to be able to uncover new benefits. So to structure our discussion, I use this framework to think about the various kinds of ecosystem tools. This is a 2x2 which shows 4 quadrants. The bottom 2 quadrants are Google first-party services and Google Marketplace services, essentially Google ecosystem. And the top 2 quadrants are the VMware first-party tools and the VMware ecosystem. Now, we are going to cover example integrations in each of these categories to give you a flavor of what we are bringing enabling along with Google VMware Engine. So the example of the first-party VMware tools are VMware products like Horizon, vRealize Automation, Site Recovery Manager, vRealize Operations. All these products are not part of the GVE base offering. The GVE base offering, just to remind you, includes vSphere, vSAN, and NSXT, and VMware HCX products. And anything outside of that is something that customers may be already using. They can bring those products and get them to work in the GVE service. The second category is the VMware ecosystem, third-party tools. Example products are like Veeam or Zerto, Cohesity, Trend Micro. There is a really long list. VMware has over thousands of ecosystem partners who have solutions that interoperate with VMware, and we intend to over time enable all of them to work with GVE. We have a fairly large list of partners and solutions that is already validated and working, and we aim to make that a very thorough and long list. On the bottom quadrant, you see Google first-party services and the Google Marketplace services. Examples of Google first-party services are Cloud Storage, Stackdriver, Anthos, and BigQuery. And in the Google ecosystem, example would be a Netapp Cloud Volume service, which is a managed storage service offered by Netapp. It allows customers to consume cloud volumes, both NFS and SMB, within their Google Compute Engine instances, and in case of Google VMware Engine, consume this storage from within Google VMware Engine, VMware VMs. So we are going to take an example from each of these categories and give you guys a flavor of what the integration looks like and how our customers can consume these. So the first example is a VMware first-party product, a solution which enables customers to set up a disaster recovery solution using VMware Site Recovery Manager. In this picture, on the left-hand side, you have the customer's on-premise environment. And as you can see, it's a VMware environment running hosts, storage, network, and vCenter. And customer has set up Site Recovery Manager and vSphere replication products in this environment. The right-hand side is the Google VMware Engine. The dedicated VMware stack is installed on bare metal host running within the dedicated isolated environment that GVE provides. And within this environment, customers can, on their own, set up and configure Site Recovery Manager and vSphere application. As you saw in the prior demo, we have a feature in Google VMware Engine called privilege escalation. So this feature allows admin users to log into vCenter and escalate their privileges, elevate their privileges temporarily to be able to install any VMware ecosystem tool if they so need so. So using this feature, users can go ahead and install a Site Recovery Manager and vSphere application after creating their solution service account in vCenter, and use those service accounts for configuring Site Recovery Manager and vSphere application. So once the Site Recovery Manager and vSphere application are installed on both the sites and configured, users can go ahead with site pairing, making sure that the sites are synced up. Now the network connectivity between the two sites is over a dedicated interconnect or a cloud VPN. As Manoj showed in the previous session, Google VMware Engine enables customers to connect to the VMware environment using Google Cloud networking services like dedicated or partner interconnect and the cloud VPN.
So Manish, it's really cool that you guys are enabling smart people to do really smart things inside of the hosted environment. But do you guys have a list of like certified applications that are supported in this environment?
Right. So we will provide list of vendors solutions that we have validated and worked with the third-party vendors. So at a very high level, there are different kinds of solutions. So some third-party ecosystem solutions are installed within a guest, so they do not require any specific special privileges in the vCenter to be installed or configured. So all of them are pretty much should work just out of the box. But there are a lot of solutions which interact with vCenter, query vCenter inventory, or would like to interact with vCenter and may require additional privileges than the privileges that are available by default in the GVE environment. For those, we are engaging them in doing the joint validation, and we will publish a list of such vendors and validated solutions at GA time.
And I think one thing I want to emphasize, this is Manoj from Google, that we are offering a native VMware platform experience. And what that means is that it is the enterprise, bits that any customer would receive, and we do provide the ability to, elevate your privileges and install any external tool that you would like. And from that standpoint, we really don't need to certify anything, unlike some versions of VMware offerings in other clouds where there is an explicit certification process because it's not the standard enterprise platform. And so what Manish was referring to is the fact that we are testing those architectures and providing best practices and giving some nuances around clarifying some nuances around network connectivity that customers often face independent of those solutions. And so that's really the value add we are providing through the documentation and sort of example architectures.
Yeah, I can absolutely see the advantage of that. If I wanted to use third-party replication tools like software-enabled replication products, or if I wanted to use storage enablers like native solutions that replicate straight to vSAN and straight to and from vSAN, this works out really, really well. It's just that this is a really early solution, and I'm not 100% clear when I start to do stuff like that where support can become a challenge.
Yeah. So so just to give you a little bit of more color on this feature. So what in the background, what we are doing is we are also monitoring the actions the users are taking, and we want to make sure that we can provide support to our customers. And if, let's say, a user by mistake or through because of some other reason changes the configuration of vCenter or powers it down, then obviously it affects the entire environment and our ability to support it. So we monitor some key resources like management virtual machines. We monitor hardware like the host and the storage, which should not be modified by users, even when they are trying to install a new application in this environment. And we basically, we are monitoring for those changes and will take appropriate action right away if we find something that can threaten our ability to keep the service up and running. So there is some, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also, to Keith's question, I think fundamentally there's two parts to the equation, right? The customer consuming the solution. They bought, let's say, Veeam from Veeam or Zerto from some Zerto. They are expected to continue working with those vendors and get support for those solutions directly from that vendor. Because ultimately this is a native VMware experience, and whatever the vendor does on premises, they are expected to do in this context as well. And when it comes to the backend side of the VMware platform part of the picture, as I mentioned, Google is the one neck to choke, and so anything to do with Google side of the house infrastructure or the VMware side of the house, even Google would be the second party to work with, right? To ensure that there is support and continuity of that tool. But fundamentally, we expect that tool to work as it works on-prem.
So solutions like this are typically targeted to large enterprises, so they like the comfort of partnerships and support agreements, etc. Are you guys going to have any go-to-market partners that you already have support agreements with?
Yeah, so all the tools that customers are using, those tools are, customers are also using the same tools in their on-prem environment. So they have, as Manoj mentioned, they have support agreements or subscriptions from those vendors. In terms of working closely, we are working with these third-party vendors, and basically, doing joint, publishing of, in cases where there are some best practices involved, we are publishing those best practices as part of our documentation, informing our customers how to configure the tools in this GVE environment. I'm not sure if that answered your question. Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, and I think when it comes to go-to-market, so as Manish mentioned, there is joint marketing and joint solutions and knowledge base being developed with a lot of vendors actually in the ecosystem. To the extent it's needed. I mean, in most cases, existing documentation should work. Now, I think when you talk about enabling vendors through a go-to-market motion and sort of enabling some sort of a marketplace of VMware solutions in particular, I would say, stay tuned on that. We are definitely thinking through that and figuring out how to make consumption and insertion of VMware ecosystem tools easier through existing commercial constructs of Google Cloud.
Yeah, it seems really straightforward to certify, or for vendors or partners to certify their applications on your platform. It's just, I come from the large enterprise, and we like these nice, warm and fuzzy. Yes, we are certified to run on GVE, and even if it's just a checkpoint, we just like to hear that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Understood. Thanks for this feedback. Yeah.
Going back to the VMware focus set of components rather than the third-party tools. VMware has this set of guidelines, the VVDs, the VMware validated designs that can be used to build your own infrastructure based on the full portfolio of VMware solutions. I understand that this is not applicable straight away to deploy this into Google Cloud, and especially with regards to all those components that are not part of the core offering of GVE. So will you provide some assistance in terms of documentations, best practices, guidelines to kind of emulate in a way what VMware provides with VVDs?
Yeah. I think that's what we are referring to as best practice documentation. Potentially, can you give me a specific example of a component that would really fit your description?
For example, VRA could be a one.
Yeah.
Anything that goes beyond the core offering of GVE.
Right.
But it is covered by the VVDs, because they tend to address very complex scenarios and very complex interactions between components. So I was wondering how you could overcome, I wouldn't say constraints or limitation, but certain characteristics of GVE that are not present in your own on-prem environment.
Right. So we have documentation and best practices available for SRM, VRA, Horizon so far, and for product like VROps and vRealize automation. Depends on how the customers want to consume those products and configure them. If we are just a target for a VRA deployment on-prem, then there isn't very specific guideline to be followed, because after the network connectivity is established from the on-prem environment where VRA is deployed to the GVE, and if there is IP reachability and vCenter in the GVE can be reached by vRealize automation, then there isn't anything specific that we need to worry about. So we are,
Yeah, I think when it comes to using the VVD practices supplied by VMware for VRA, we do expect them to work as is, because ultimately this is a native VMware platform, and nothing in this platform is different from what an enterprise would configure in a standard practice on-prem. And in fact, our underlying platform is also fully verified and validated by VMware. So the existing VVD practices for deployment of VRA should work as is. I think the best practices that Manish was referring to was around the cloud integration aspects. For the features that our platform supports. For example, VPC peering and establishing network connectivity, establishing the firewalls of the underlay environment. Those are the kinds of things that our best practices would cover. So they would be complementary to the VVD.
Yes.
Thank you.
And this is Wade. I just want to add, just reiterate what Manoj just said, absolutely. And remember that a large portion of VVDs is focused on the bring up of the base components that we've already are intrinsic to the VMware as a Service GVE engine. So we've already done the heavy lifting of bring up with vSphere, NSXT, vSAN, HCX. And so that's already out of component. And any add-on piece that are part of VVD, as Manoj said, we would completely support.
So Wade, what you just said is a big deal, because one of the challenges with HCX in the past is that it was a part of NSXT only that you could get with the competitive solution. If I'm correct, VMware has now started to sell that as a standalone product. So all of the advantages of HCX is now available to this platform as well?
Yep, absolutely.
And no extra charge for HCX.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on to the next topic. If there are questions, feel free to interrupt me. But in absence of any questions, I'll continue. So this is an example of a solution which basically shows how we support a VMware ecosystem tool with GVE. And this is a slightly involved example, because in setting up a backup solution, we need to interact with some Google services. So in this example, we have chosen Veeam as an example, but we are doing similar work, and we support other backup vendors that are supported by VMware using its VADP API. So this diagram is showing on the left-hand side Google VMware Engine, where customer wants to take backup of his virtual machines, VMware virtual machines that are running in the SDDC in GVE. And he has installed Veeam in a VM. He has installed separated out proxy server as a separate virtual machine, because this is a relatively larger environment. And he wants to also keep a local backup repository on the cluster itself for fast restores time. So there is a backup repository on the cluster with maybe only 5 days of data. And then this is the primary backup repository. And the secondary backup repository is running in a Google Cloud customer VPC. And this backup repository is the secondary backup repository with larger capacity and is storing data for the last 30 days or 90 days, depending on customer's backup policy. And for longer term retention, this backup solution is using cloud storage. So the older backups are stored in cloud storage, phased out to different storage profiles over time to optimize cost. So this kind of a solution requires configuring some networking between or making sure that the networking between the Google VMware Engine and the cloud customer VPC is working fine. If customer chooses to dedicate a separate VPC for a backup repository and he chooses to not use the main host project that he is using. So it requires some best practice, some advice, which we have captured in our documentation and solution, and we are making it available to our customers so that they can have some guidance on how to deploy a solution like this. But not all VMware ecosystem tools would fit in this category. Some of them may be self-contained, or some of them may require interaction back to the on-prem, but not necessarily interacting with Google services. So in those cases, existing design documentation available from VMware should apply quite well. So in this example, the network connection between the GVE and the customer VPC is a private connection. So when customers do a backup and restore, as long as the backup repository, the secondary backup repository is in the same region as the Google VMware Engine private cloud, then there are no network charges for either backup or restore. So that way, it's an efficient solution which saves customers cost for taking backups, networking costs for taking backups. Okay. So moving on to the next topic. So we covered.
Really quick on the backup thing. Is this a one? Is there a way that they can do more than one backup to more than one service, or is it one service only?
Yeah, they can back up multiple clusters. Customers can back up multiple clusters, multiple private clouds. They can back them up to the same backup repository, same VPC where they have one backup repository or multiple backup repository. They can scale out the backup repository capacity as needed very easily. They can do that in Google Cloud. They can add more storage buckets, increase the capacity on the backend side. It's all a very flexible way of handling this. Now, the first two solutions that I talked so far, they capture the VMware first-party solution. The example we covered was Site Recovery Manager. The second example we covered was VMware's ecosystem third-party, and we chose Veeam as an example deployment there. Now I'm going to talk about how can customers consume Google services, cloud services for complementing their infra. So there are four main areas. The first area is the operations management, where Google Cloud Stack Driver Suite is the right tool. On the storage and data protection side, there are cloud storage and persistent disk offerings, which complement the primary and secondary storage needs of the VMware environment. On the networking side, there are services like Cloud Interconnect, Partner Interconnect, Dedicated Interconnect, Cloud VPN, and Cloud Load Balancer. We already discussed Dedicated Interconnect and Cloud VPN as primary mechanisms using which customers can connect their GVE private clouds to their on-prem environments. And then finally, on the application infrastructure side, customers can deploy GKE on-prem, Anthos on VMware, and they can do it today on their on-prem environment, VMware environment. But what GVE enables is to do the same thing on VMware environment in Google VMware Engine. And that's where basically this service enables customers to have more choice and flexibility. So we'll talk about a few examples from these integrations in a little bit more detail. So the first solution is Google Cloud Operations, which is formerly known as Stackdriver. So this is a suite of products which basically provides capabilities like logging, log aggregation, log ingestion, log analysis. It provides capabilities for monitoring. And this diagram actually shows you a 30,000 feet view of the architecture of the technology behind this product suite. So what is happening here is logs, metrics, context, snapshots, and traces. All of this input data can be consumed from various input sources by Stackdriver. So these could be your applications, these could be your open source components, these could be your Google Cloud services, or even other instances running in other public clouds. So Stackdriver can consume logs, metrics, etc. from various input sources, and then it can infer relationships or extract errors or compute health, generate insights, and evaluate alerting policies on this collected data, and provide users with dashboards, visualizations, notifications, error reports, and scorecards. Now, the output data can be consumed by other ecosystem tools or by cloud services, other cloud services like BigQuery. And this is already available for all the GCE virtual machines and applications running in GCE. They come by default with Stackdriver integration. And what we are doing is basically making this available to the GVE environment, Google VMware Engine environment. And we do it at two levels. One is we can feed the logs that are emitted by ESXi hosts and vCenter. All these logs can be funneled to the Stackdriver, or customers can choose to funnel their logs of virtual machines and their applications to Stackdriver, and basically do the log analysis using Stackdriver. You can do monitoring and alerting based on different rules using Stackdriver.
Can you show us a little bit what that integration looks like from the user perspective?
Yeah, so from the user perspective, for the infrastructure logs like ESXi hosts and vCenter, the logs can be forwarded to a syslog today, and we can just consume those logs and funnel them to a workspace in Google Cloud. So the way Stackdriver works is you have to create a workspace and basically in a GCP project, and we basically provide these. This as a log source, add the host and the vCenter as a log source to Stackdriver. And once the logs are configured, they can be received by Stackdriver. And then there are some built-in dashboards that come out of box right away. From the user's perspective, if they want to also use Stackdriver with their applications and virtual machines, they can get some basic information about their virtual machines, like utilization metrics for CPU and storage and network out of the box, because that information is available in vCenter. And if we have a plugin to vCenter which can collect that information and forward it to Stackdriver, the users don't need to do anything else. But if the users want some more advanced metrics which are not available at the vCenter level, they may choose to install agents within the guest to collect these additional metrics and additional information, things like processor IDs and memory utilization and such.
Okay, you mentioned briefly there's a notion of a vCenter plugin. If I wanted to consolidate reporting, that plugin would also work on my on-premises installation?
Yeah, if you want to consolidate reporting from your on-prem also to the Stackdriver in Google Cloud, yes, then you would have to have that plugin on the on-prem vCenter also.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So the next topic is GVE integration with Netapp Cloud Volumes. Basically, this is the example of Google Cloud Marketplace integration, where Netapp Cloud Volumes is a service available in Google Cloud Marketplace. It is a fully managed service by Netapp. Basically, provides a native experience of Google Cloud Console, supported by Google. There is integrated billing and pay-as-you-go metering by Netapp. So the customers get an integrated bill from Google Cloud, which includes their consumption of Netapp Cloud Volumes. So this is an example of how we can enable integration with such third-party marketplace services. So the use case here is that you have a Google VMware Engine environment on the left side of the picture, and you have these VMware virtual machines. Now, these virtual machines can consume cloud volume file storage as mount points, which are created in the Netapp Cloud Volume service. So the users would go to their Google Cloud Console, and then from there, they would create these cloud volumes. And these cloud volumes are available to be mounted from within the guest virtual machines of VMware VMs. So that's the first use case, guest file storage. The second use case is the ESXi secondary storage. Basically, the idea is that the NFS volumes can be mounted to the host, ESXi host, and used as secondary storage for things like storing backup copies or storing templates and images in the VMware environment. I know there was a question before on the secondary, on the storage, and how you guys are working with any third-party partners to provide other storage options to customers. So this is an example of what we are working with Netapp on.
Yeah, so I'll play the role of the storage expert on this TFD. Make sure I heard this correctly. So basically, I can use this as secondary storage for ESXi host. So if I have a product that can back up to secondary storage NFS targets, I can use those products, be it Commvault, Netapp, whatever the solution. I can use this as a typical NFS mount point. I just can't run VMs, or I shouldn't, because there's technically no reason why I wouldn't be able to. The latency would be probably pretty bad, but I can run VMs from this.
Yeah, so I think that is you hit the issue on the head. I think it is the performance. If the performance is good enough for certain workloads, then this is definitely an option for users. But we anticipate that it is definitely a very good option for secondary storage.
But this would also be effective for primary storage as well, because it depends on the definition of primary, right? So I mean, secondary doesn't have to be offline or backups or archiving or something. You could use this for to support an application with a lot of data or something like that. And you could also use this for cloud bursting, because the nice thing about Netapp Cloud Volumes is that you can replicate data from on-premises to the cloud using native Netapp tools.
Mm-hmm.
So the going deeper down this design route is that I can use this for analytics data, for a secondary layer of storage for analytics data. So I can use the local vSAN storage for hot data, and then this secondary set of storage for workloads or volumes that I don't need to move fast. So I can tier the data if I need it. So this is a pretty useful feature.
Do you expect that in the future you're going to be able to use this as primary storage for VMs in GVE?
Yeah, so we don't. We always would have a vSAN component in the picture for when it comes to bootstrapping the environment and making sure that the management components of the environment have a storage home by default. But we are looking at options where certainly using Netapp Cloud volumes, you can get external storage today, and depending on your definition of primary, use it for primary or secondary. There's no restriction that way. But we are looking at scenarios where we do not have to bring in a lot of storage by default into the service as part of the hyperconverged node, and give customers the ability to add external storage options. I'm not at the liberty to disclose sort of exactly how we'll go about achieving that, but certainly to the extent third-party options are available, we would support them to be used.
Okay, thanks.
To Stackdriver for a second, because I'm wondering, is Stackdriver included or is there a cost? And are agents included or is there a cost? Just pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think agents are open source for a lot of applications. So agents, obviously, they don't have any cost. For Stackdriver, Stackdriver is not bundled with Google VMware Engine. It's a separate service, which is a Google service. I'm not sure how it is priced or how it's
typically it gets priced by the amount of data you send to it. But I think the volume of data that you would expect would come from workloads, and we do expect that for workload monitoring you would use the paid aspect of Stackdriver. We are looking at ways to make Stackdriver insertion simpler, so stay tuned. But for now, yeah, Stackdriver gets consumed by the amount of storage and paid priced by the amount of storage.
So just to be perfectly clear, you have been talking about Netapp Cloud volumes, and that's supported as per now, but in the future you will be supporting other solutions as well, or do you today already support other similar solutions?
There aren't similar solutions like Netapp. Netapp has gone beyond sort of making just a solution available. Like their integration has with billing and UI is also available today. So I don't believe there are storage vendors like Netapp that are available on Google Cloud as of today. But when they become available, we would support them equally well, right?
I guarantee that they all want to be available in Google Cloud. That's something that I talk with them a lot about.
Yeah, absolutely, and we are working on those partnerships to make that give them a home in Google Cloud too.
Okay, so the next two services are some of the most strategic areas at Google Cloud. The first one is BigQuery, and as you guys may already be aware, there is a lot of customer interest and traction of BigQuery, and we basically kind of enable BigQuery to work with GVE out of the box. So BigQuery is Google Cloud Platform's enterprise data warehouse for analytics, and many customers are adopting BigQuery because of its petabyte scale and real-time analytics capabilities on streaming data. It's a fully managed and serverless service, and it's customers get convenience of standard SQL, and essentially they stream the data from their data sources, whether that's on-prem or whether it is any Google Cloud data source. And in our solution integration, the data source is databases that are running on Google VMware Engine. So when customers migrate their VMware workloads to Google VMware Engine, and they have databases running in this environment, they can basically extract this data and feed it to Google Cloud Storage, and from there, feed it to Google BigQuery, and consume this data, visualize it using tools like Tableau or Salesforce Wave. So this integration already works today out of the box, and we are hoping that our customers will get more flexibility and choice through the solutions like these. Okay, and finally, Google Cloud's Anthos. So I'm just going to basically cut to the chase here and talk about the GVE integration with Anthos. So what we are doing is we are providing another destination target for Anthos. The VMware environment in GVE can be used as another target, and for certain scenarios, this makes better sense than running Anthos either on-prem or in a cloud environment. The first is the performance. So GVE provides a high-end dedicated infrastructure, which is isolated and dedicated to a customer. So where in use cases where application performance is critical, this is a potential good fit. In use cases where customers care about locality and they want the environment to be in a given region, it is a good fit where the cloud, public cloud environments may not be applicable. Wherever privacy and security concerns are paramount, in those cases, GVE is a good fit. Running Anthos on GVE is a good fit, and it provides more flexibility overall to the options that our customers have. So that's another way we are adding more choice and flexibility to our users.
So as we open it up to sessions, the stuff that I'm super interested in is some of the integrations, the future plan integrations with stuff like serverless. Like I really want to be able to have events that happen, whether they're in vSphere directly or in my applications that's sitting in VMware vSphere, which is less interesting. Because if I can make something happen in vSphere, whether it's DRS, etc., and then some serverless event kicks off, that would be really interesting to me.
Okay. Do you have any specific application in mind for this kind of a capability?
So it's not necessarily a specific application. So as I think through like serverless and microservices-based constructs that I have running in Anthos or that I want to kick off or integrate in Anthos. So I have some legacy application in vSphere, and that, let's say that it's a Oracle database, and that Oracle database hits a threshold of something, and I want some functions to take place. And I get that, I get that alert from vSphere, and then I can use that logging to kick off a serverless function or a set of processes in Anthos, either on-prem or off-prem. That's the type of stuff that I want to make available to my developers.
Got it.
Yeah, I think that's the power of the cloud, right? That these services that are canonical have interfaces, and you can weave them together in very interesting ways and achieve scenarios that you wouldn't have thought were possible otherwise. So in your example, Keith, this is possible already today because the serverless platform that Google Cloud supports events that come from Stackdriver. And as Manish described, the VMware platform can send events, the entire event stream that comes that happen on the VMware platform to Stackdriver as a logging source. And so essentially, what you just said is possible. You just need to put them together by creating the right trigger.
Ask for a feature and it will be implemented. Thank you.
Got it. Yeah. We can make that more seamless and less code required to make it work. Kind of a feature direction for sure. Yes.
No, but the fact that the gateway capability is already there and I don't have to wait. I can do it today if I wanted to, and then you guys are hopefully just going to make it a little bit more seamless in the future.
Yeah, indeed.
Mhm.
So the one thing I don't know if we saw was the bringing of Istio and service meshes and Kubernetes constructs from the data center, from inside of the VCP and Google in general into vSphere. Can you guys talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, our Anthos integration is in fact making that possible. So as you know, the Anthos platform is a central control plane that can manage your container deployments anywhere you run them, whether they are in the cloud or in VMware. And Anthos as a platform is an overlay deployment possible on GVE as well. And so Anthos brings that ability to treat the VMware platform as a substrate for container deployment, get the compute as well as the persistent storage. And then it is also able to weave in an operations layer for monitoring, logging by default that come out of containers, whether they're deployed on VMware or in public cloud or GKE or any other source consistently. And then it also gives the backend framework to deploy a new application or microservices-based application that you might create in the enterprise. So I think what we are saying is we are simply leveraging that fabric and that control plane that Anthos brings by saying that Google VMware Engine supports the VMware platform natively, and because the Anthos platform runs on VMware, that power is brought to our service as well.
I have a question. It's not really related to Anthos. It's more about VMware Horizon or Citrix XenApp and end user computing, and if this is even a platform that would be ideal for them, or if it's supported.
Yeah, Horizon is definitely supported, and there is no restriction. And in fact, we have some customers who have tried Horizon in the SDDC environment in GVE. So, however, it is customer managed, and customer has to bring the licenses on his own. The licenses are not included in the service, and the service is not managing the Horizon management components for the customer. Customers can use the cloud pod architecture to extend their on-prem Horizon deployment and add a pod in the cloud in a region of their choice. So it's a flexibility they can get. Or if they want this to be a separate standalone deployment, that's also possible. It's a choice that they can make. If they want to enable, there is a lot of options in terms of how they want to deploy, how they want to enable their users to connect to their desktop tools. They can directly go via public IP from the internet where their end users are. Or if they want to go through on-prem, that's also a possibility. In that case, we ensure that all the traffic back to the users goes through on-prem. So it's a fully supported solution. Now, in case of Citrix PVS, we have just started working with Citrix on this solution, and we hope to fully support them by generally available timeframe. We definitely want to work with Citrix and enable customers who are using Citrix.
Okay. It also goes to for end user computing, which is what we're talking about right now. What about hardware requirements like graphics for this kind of stuff that we're doing right now, like video and sound? Do you guys? I know you guys do the hardware as yourself. So if there's a hardware requirement like a vGPU or something like that, you guys provide that, or is that something the customer has to figure out?
Right. So far, as you can see from our node specification, we do not have GPU as part of our hardware specification. So the GPU acceleration is not available today, but it is something that we are keeping an eye on based on customer demand. We can always make a decision on how things are. Also, in some cases, not all, in some cases, customers are basically segregating their users and figuring out which environment is the best fit for what kind of use cases. So there is also that aspect of figuring out the use cases that we can meet today, and not try to use it for their entire VDI solution for all kinds of users where we may not have those hardware acceleration capabilities.
Okay, thank you. Fair enough.
Just a quick question here on some basic stuff around pricing. Can we ask that right now? I see on the web page it says call sales. Can you give us a little bit of scope on at least an envelope and commitment times and that kind of thing?
Yeah, Manoj, you want to take that, or Jason?
Yeah, we're not ready to announce the pricing. We are still going through our internal process for making sure it's all locked and loaded. And so, yeah, we are not, but we promise to make it competitive with market options.
Okay, do you have a planned announced date on that so I can mark my calendar and check back in?
We believe that by next 2020, which is April 6th to 8th. Yeah, I hope I got those dates right. We will have that available.
Pricing aside,
I'm sure we're all waiting for it.
So aside from the pricing itself, are you locked into 1 year, 3 year, further number of year, or can you do it by the month, like the cloud?
Jason, you want to take that?
Yeah, we are offering 1 and 3 year like other cloud solutions, but we also offer an hourly service. So if you have a scenario where you need to add nodes on for a burst workload or a DR workload, you can pay for them by the hour and pay for only the hours that you use them for. So it's highly flexible and highly cloud-like from that perspective. A lot of customers tend to put a toehold in the cloud and have a small cluster there initially, and then when they do need to burst, they can and they can maintain replication for like a DR event to the toehold that's in the cloud. And when they need excess capacity, then they can add scale out as they need to. So one of the advantages of being at Google is we have hardware.
I can see that being a really popular use case.
Also cyclical, right now you can imagine the video conferencing companies need a little bit of capacity, and but universities, typically have bursts, or tax preparers or other cyclical industries really take advantage of it. Black Friday is a very popular scenario.
Or if I just needed to do more VDI sessions right now, this is kind of perfect.
Exactly.
And for disaster recovery, it means I can actually do a real disaster recovery test at scale without having to pay for a 3-year commitment on an entire batch of hardware copied to the data center, to your data centers.
It's a really attractive offering. It changes the economics of a DR solution dramatically and the total cost of ownership. And then people can actually do your tests 3 times a year, as you pointed out, with a real scenario and not have to have all that hardware on standby. And also, the economics pay out pretty well. That when you can just keep a small component in the cloud, even for daily bursting, not DR, but mergers and acquisitions was another popular one that we see. Is when you suddenly need excess capacity because you're splitting a company in half, or because you just integrated a company, or data center migrations, companies that want to shut down or move workloads. It's a great way to burst and get it just for what you need it, and only pay for the long terms when you see the benefit of it. Other questions?
I think in closing, I want to just mention this, that as you can see, we're the new face of Google Cloud. I think Google is now embracing the enterprise very directly, meeting customers where they are, as opposed to requiring them to change everything to embrace the cloud. So we expect more from us, and expect more, Google to be more and more enterprise friendly and relevant and compelling to enterprise needs in the future as well.